A warm welcome from Amsterdam, and thanks for tuning in to a new episode of Game Consultant. Your host of today is Reinout.
Oscar Clarke is the name. The man with the hat. We all know him. We all saw him. We all spoke to him because he has a large network in gaming. But not all, I would say, a large network. He has also quite some expertise. And he has built it up. And although he didn't want to say anything about his age, he mentioned it a bit in a different way. I think he still knows how a modem worked. So during our interview, I was actually saying okay, I can't actually explain this one to my son. So anyways, sorry, Oscar. So we had an interview and we covered many topics from which events should you go to? How are you looking at user acquisition? Development. I mean, I think we both feel that today young kids, entrepreneurs, whatever, can start a game studio and they can do it sort of next to their current jobs and test the waters. And if they feel there is something, they can take that plunge and get funding. And what kind of funding? Seed funding, and how should you publish? I did mention user acquisition, but also how is he looking at the gaming industry as it is in 2020. Anyways, Thursday, March 19th, a new episode 11 of Game Consultant with Oscar Clarke. So I do work with Anchor. That's a pretty good app for your podcast. And so I send people a link before we do the interview. And Oscar was very much on time. And then we're sort of live as of that moment. And I have that with everyone. And you keep on talking with each other about, how are you doing? And but, that first minute and 20 seconds, it was just fun. Normally I would take out the introduction and then have the interview, but I have to share this with you.
Oh, it's funny.
Cool.
Actually, I can't find the questions email anywhere. It's not a problem.
No, it's Oscar. It's about how you turn up with Unity. What are you doing today? How are you looking at gaming? The usual. Yeah. But I mean, if you want to go certain places, I mean,
you can go anywhere. I've been in the industry 22 years. I
exactly.
started out with dial-up modems. I was playing online games in 1984 on my couple of modem on my Apple IIe. So basically, I live, breathe, connected gaming, and have done for my whole life.
Cool.
But I actually started out trying to make board games and role-playing games and realised I could never make any money.
Yeah, exactly.
Except now you can.
Yeah. Well, no worries. I mean, I'm going to start it. I just do a quick intro.
Yep.
And then we'll take it away. And there will be somewhere an end after half an hour, but we'll find it where it is.
And otherwise, you say half an hour.
Yeah,
you've talked to me for longer than half an hour. I don't think you've ever talked to me less than half an hour.
It's like, thanks, Oscar. Go.
Yes. Go away.
All right, There we go. And that was a fun beginning of what was 60 minutes of so much information, so much experience, insights, vision. It was fun listening. Did I have to ask questions? Occasionally. Did I saw the 30 minutes range go by? Yes, I did. Did I stop him? No way. I hope you enjoy. Go sit down, lay back, listen, let the man talk. Okay, guys, today we have Oscar Clark. Some do recognize him, the man with the hat. He just is telling me that he's longer in gaming than I am. So the first question is, Oscar, introduce yourself, but I definitely want to hear the same story I just heard. What was your first gaming experience?
So, there's so many ways to start. It depends on where you want to start with computer gaming or physical gaming. So yeah, I've been in the industry for 22 years, but I first had my interest in computer gaming in 1984 with my Apple IIe. In fact, I was doing online games. I had a couple of modems, so I was able to play games like Shards, which is a text-based multiplayer game. Can you imagine that in 1984?
I'm more intrigued about, you say, a couple of modems.
Yeah, so coupler. It's a coupler modem. It's not two modems, although it sounds like it.
Yeah.
It's a coupler modem was this thing where you took your physical handset from your phone, which is wired into the wall. You then put the rubber suckers around the two ends of the headset, and it literally worked on the sound. So you know that kind of funny sound that you hear about with dial-up modems? That was how it worked.
If I had to explain this to my son, I think we already stopped by the moment that you say a regular phone.
Yeah,
so he would look at his mobile and said, "How the f would you do that?"
Yeah, exactly. How on earth would you put a regular phone into that? But yeah, so old school, ancient history. I was really into gaming anyway. My uncle got me into D&D when I was 10. Now, bearing in mind how old I am, that hadn't been out that long. So yeah, I was doing that as a kid, and I was basically enjoying trying to make board games and role-playing games, going around tours around the UK. I even won a couple of little tiny. When I say awards, it's like ridiculous. I run these little kind of best of shows in these shows that you took your games to, and there might be 200 people in the event. It was nothing, but it's still kind of nice. But yeah, so I made my first pitch for a game when I was 18. We basically went to Rainbird and said, "Look at our game," and they said, "Great, come back when you made it." And my coder ended up going, and he's basically the lead coder on Oracle's payroll system now. So, he found a much more lucrative job than I ever would. But yeah, he's a good guy. Actually ended up being my best man, but that's another subject. But yeah, so I properly got into games as an industry when I was 27. Oh, goodness me. And that was 22 years ago. So yeah, you can work out the math. Yeah, it's more than that now. Hang on. Yeah, anyway, not far off that math. But yeah, so I ended up working for British Telecom, making an online gaming service. Well, sorry, running is probably the best way to describe it. I came on as a marketing manager. And before you knew it, I was designing the platform and running the team and running community. So literally, I've been running online gaming experiences since 1998. So
then the question would be, because you said, I was the marketing manager, and I'm asking more people, was it all along a plan to start working in gaming? Did you have a degree that would lead you to gaming?
No, I kind of just because I spent so much time playing games, I ended up basically screwing up my A levels, and that made it difficult for me to get a university course. So I ended up going to a technical college, would you believe, and did a sandwich course, which is basically a work placement and education course on business and finance. Now, it was degree equivalent, so it's not that bad. And I made up for it later. I got my diploma in marketing, which is a postgraduate. So, I made up for it in the end. But it was, I was kind of going, well, what do I do? A bit lost, really. I thought, I can talk fairly well. I understand a little bit of psychology. Marketing seemed like a plan.
Yeah.
And I ended up as a marketing manager doing things like recipe management software. Can you imagine that?
Jesus.
Yeah, and the pension software, running pension systems.
Did it pay well?
The interesting thing, though, is I was even a marketing manager for a SAP consultancy. So if anyone's done any of the most boring technology in the planet. It's probably the people who do these big enterprise resource planning software tools. And I was the marketing manager for one of those agencies. That they charge fortunes. I mean, absolute fortunes to do this stuff. But what was interesting about all of this stuff is it really helped me understand and get a grounding in how do you write requirements. You know, what is it that people need, and how do you then translate a need into a system, into delivery. So as much as I complain that how boring my previous jobs were, and that's probably a little unfair. It's amazing how much fun you can have even in something as boring as pensions.
But all those experiences led to right now almost not almost, more than 20 years in gaming.
Yeah.
And that means that means you've seen gaming. I mean,
I've basically been on the leading edge of online gaming since it almost started, and it's an odd position because obviously, you know, if I'd have been doing kind of direct making games myself from day one, I'm sure I'd have done some cool stuff, and people have forgotten about things like Wireplay. You know, when you have a community where I think it was 1999 when we first hit 1,000 concurrent users. Now, at the time, that doesn't, nowadays that seems nothing. I mean, you don't even start it if you haven't got 1,000 concurrent users. You haven't even got testing going if you haven't got 1,000 concurrent users. But in 1999, having 1,000 concurrent users was one of the biggest services in the world.
Yeah.
It may have been the biggest at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I mean, probably M Player at the time was slightly bigger. But then you've got things like when I moved into 3, the mobile operator, a little bit later, we were doing the first 3G games, and we were starting to play with app stores before anyone knew it. We were being told by people when we had games running on phones. We were told by people, why would anyone want to do that? I mean, seriously, no one thought there was any point in ever having a smartphone. Why would anyone want a smartphone? Why would anyone want a camera on a phone? And one of the biggest lessons, I think, of 3 was, yes, I learned a huge amount about running an app store, about actually doing, clever things that retail teams would do normally that still aren't being done to this day. Now, it was in premium pricing era, but I learned about, basically variable pricing. I learned about setting up player life cycle based pricing structures. I learned about, running sales in a way that grows audiences because I could. And I'm very lucky that, I was in the right position so that by 2005, we had the most successful mobile operator in the world in terms of revenue per user. And that's not just guessing. We had data, because someone accidentally leaked one of the other telcos' data. We could work it out.
Yeah.
And that's to me, that's like, where would you ever have been given a chance to do something that was groundbreaking, different, get to meet amazing people, like Ilka, like Kristen Segaslari. I mean, the list of the people who are like the big cheeses nowadays, who I got to meet, back in 2001, 2002.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Actually 2003, I think, was some of them. Yeah,
it's funny. There's a TV commercial here in Holland. It's Seago. It's a broadband internet deliverer.
Yeah,
and there's a guy actually saying he's in a bar with some friends, and there's a guy with a very old telephone. And they are making fun of him, saying like, so you can be actually boarded 24/7. You're an idiot. Yeah. And then the next scene is that he's in the rain together with his girlfriend outside in front of what we call a video store, where you can actually pick up videotapes. And and he's saying to her, is like, what? Online videos? And then it turns into fast speed internet, and it's downloading like in a second. You have a complete game, and this guy is telling him that, and then he has all those visions from the past, and then he's saying like, okay, that could be something.
Yeah.
So he has learned from.
It's a magical process that the thing is that we were talking about what you could do with mobile when I was still at Wireplay. So we're talking about the year 2000, 1999. and I think it was 2000. I can't remember years,
Yeah.
but I remember doing a plan about content delivery over TV, using the set-top box, using that over mobile. We're even talking about streaming. In fact, I actually ended up working for Real Networks for a very brief period of time, who were the streaming gods of the era. And Gamehouse came out of that. So it's interesting how, you know, a lot of what we do now by just, you know, it's just obvious. We were thinking about as far away ago as that. We were thinking about what could it be. Now, the technology couldn't keep up with an experience that would be good for players. Don't get me wrong, but we learned lessons about what could be possible as early as that.
Yeah. And so the setup box, I've been hearing a lot. So we have Philips over here.
Yeah.
And they have actually been contacting me so many times. Can we do something with the setup box? I mean, when did it die? When did finally someone, or has it been replaced?
No, it's not dead yet even. It's because the set-top box is a brilliant way of providing DRM for big television companies.
Yeah.
So the thing that's going to kill it off permanently is the not needing them anymore. So, you know, the Skies of this world, the cable companies of this world still rely on the set-top box. Now, they've improved them to a large extent, but essentially, Netflix means I don't need them anymore.
No.
So I got rid of my my cable subscription, my satellite subscriptions. I just have you know, a little stick that goes in my telly, and I watch, you know, streaming services. I don't watch live services anymore. And I would argue this is the evolutionary process. You have big companies who enable new experiences, and then they stick to those experiences. They hold on to them, and they start using them so they become a barrier to experience, and then they get, you know, their economy, their kind of their cash flow decimated because they hold out too long. And this is the sort of cycle of the technology route. You know, I think we're going to see the same thing with cable providers when 5G, or if 5G can get the ubiquity it needs, because at the point you've got a 5G connection, as long as that 5G connection is in your area, you don't need broadband anymore, folks. And that is a magic thing. Now, obviously, there's issues with there, and I've been in the heart of telcos, so I can see how easy telcos try to do things like charging for data. It's like the most insane thing. You know, the whole thing about consumer experiences is you've got to target and charge on things that the consumer understands.
Yeah.
Do you know how much data you're using when you use Google Maps versus an email? Most people haven't got the slightest clue, and neither should they have. They shouldn't need to have.
No.
And it's not even related to the cost that the companies are actually incurring, to a certain extent. But what does matter is the availability of, you know, that data resource. You know, demand on it is important, but concurrency is more important. Anyway, so I bore into this sort of stuff.
No. That's interesting because I mean, we're now seeing an increase. We're seeing an increase of revenues that actually is going, to my belief, and besides the fact that we have coronavirus and it could actually be exploding, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you look at the last 3 to 4 years, I see an increase, and then everyone is saying, the industry is growing because better games, blah, 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 blah. It's part of it, but I also think it's down to the fact that I can actually go on a holiday and I don't have to worry that Sebastian, my son, is playing games. I even don't have to say be on the Wi-Fi of the Wi-Fi of the hotel at all times. It doesn't even matter anymore. And so he has internet all over the place. Yeah. It's fast. Although I have to say that the Instagrams and the YouTubes are, those are the drainers when it comes to, but the games are not.
No, generally not. I mean, most games don't need a lot of data. Some of them, so there's a problem because of the scale of some of these games. So games on phones that can be in the gigabytes now. But the maximum limits of the download on the app stores are still relatively low, you know, hundreds of K. I say relatively low. It's hundreds of megs. Sorry, 100 megs is still decent for most games to get started, but a lot of the activity is going on in the background. And if you're downloading that initially in one big burst, you have this terrible delay before you get into the game. But increasingly, developers are being smart about that, and they're packaging what you need to start the game, and then they're delivering additional material over time. So as long as you're doing that sensibly, and you're thinking about the consumer experience, then it shouldn't use up that much data in the long term. But like I say, it depends on the game you're playing.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about Unity, the rise of a company that first actually, if I think about it, David was always standing at those conferences at a table, handing out flyers.
Well, it kind of starts for me when I left Sony. So I was a home architect at Sony for their virtual world PlayStation Home. And the weird thing about that is that was a game engine that developers were making games for, as well as being a virtual world. I mean, I'm not saying it was the best game engine in the world. It was actually remarkably good.
But it was an engine. Yeah.
But it was effectively an engine. And we were actually running a freemium game service and stuff like that, effectively, on console, which is weird. So I leave Sony because they made a decision they weren't going to put home on PlayStation 4, which I still think was a mistake, but I can kind of understand it. And I start consulting, and I'm working with a Chinese social game platform at the time, doing evangelism. And I got to meet a guy called UC Larkin, who's a fantastic guy, and his team who are doing rewarded ads. I mean, it's a bit more complicated because we were also doing gameplay recording.
Rewarded ads.
But we were doing these rewarded ads, which at the time was pretty new. There was, I think, Ad Connery and Bungle, but Applifier, this company, were basically,
We're talking 2.8, 2.9?
No, we're talking 2014, actually. I think it was 2014.
Oh yeah, with Fungo,
Yeah.
No, that much, 2013,
Yeah. So basically, UC and David got on quite nicely, it turned out. I happened to be in the Unity offices. My friend Julie had invited me, and she was running the Global Game Jam, not Global Game Jam, the Nordic Game Jam, sorry. And she had a whole bunch of developers in the Unity offices, and she wanted me and Joachim to talk to them about the games industry, which was lovely. And all of the Unity folks I knew a lot of them anyway, but they were all acting a bit weird about me, and I couldn't quite work it out. And I didn't think anything of it. 2 weeks later, UC told me we were being bought by Unity. And it turned out everybody in Unity knew, and none of the people at Applifier had a clue. And it was fantastic because it was two companies who had exactly the same personality in terms of like entrepreneurial spirit, desire for excellence, but also, really caring what happens to game developers. And so it came, I just went along with the package. I was consulting as well. I've done this a lot where I have a main client like Unity or like Applifier before that, where I spend half my time and I evangelize on behalf of their service. And I do consultancy in the background because I think that unless you're talking about it isn't good enough. So I'm always playing and working on things of my own or helping other developers, but always learning, continuously interested in learning. And so I had this fantastic position where for basically 4.5 years, or was it 5 years? No, I think 4.5 years. I got to stand on stage for one of the most interesting companies in the world, helping developers basically, access the ability to make games regardless of their size and scale, and to be able to make games of the same quality, dependent on their talent and skill. That's a fantastic position to be in. And I was talking about how to make games commercial, because obviously with all this background of like development strategy, running live operations, understanding data, it turns out that's quite useful. So I got to think about anything I wanted to in terms of what did I think was going to be useful. I listened to a lot of developers about what they wanted to hear. And I got to come up with a program of like, here, look, have you talked about this? So obviously we talked a lot about rewarded ads and how they were used. but it meant that I ended up spending more time thinking about how game design is affected by the way you monetize, and also how longevity and player life cycle is affected by that. And I had a lot of background from my previous roles I could bring into that. So I ended up writing a book, Games as a Service, which was going down quite well. In fact, the fact that the first...
Hold on.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on. Games as a Service.
Yes.
I got the question yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And I completely didn't understand exactly what it does mean. I think the definition is different to people, but what are you seeing as game as a service?
So
games as a
what I think of as a game as a service is a game that where most of the focus is after the launch. So this is one of the areas that I specialize in nowadays, which is basically helping teams understand, yes, you want to make a great game, and that's fine. And if you're going to make a hyper casual game, then that's probably all you need to do, and you've got to work on the efficiency of making it. But if you're making a game where you want retention, you've got to think not only about the mechanic and how extensible it is and therefore how much fun it can be, but also the context, by which I mean the reason to play and the metagame. And I separate those two things out because I think people confuse what a metagame is. If you talk about the context of play and then the metagame, you can see a progression in layers from an original idea of a game, what do I do when I play it, the reason why I play it, and the reason why I keep on playing it. Because we don't keep on playing it because of the narrative in most cases, because narratives run out. We keep on playing because of the social context, because of the way it fits our daily routine, because it has some kind of shareability or engagement that separates us from the sort of routine and mundane. That is what makes a hobby. That's what makes a passion, is that longevity. So when I talk about games as a service, it's the business of making a game work longer term to deliver better value for players. Now, the trouble we have at the moment is that there's a lot of people who are doing it in a, dare I say, half-assed way. I'm not a fan, personally, where you charge someone up front and you continue to charge them within the game. I don't think it's generally a good business.
I agree.
No, I can see reasons why you would do it. There's a lot of people who can't give up the pay up front model. I totally understand that. That's their choice. But we've seen time and time again, proof upon proof upon proof, if you make a game that's good, people want to play it. So if you can create no barrier to entry and create value in the game, ongoing value in the game through events and promotions and activities and community and content releases, all this kind of momentum. And if you can do that in a trustworthy, predictable, authentic, passionate way, people want to give you their money because they want those things. And the wanting is the important part here. It's anyone who's trying to trick people, anyone who's trying to sort of, bait and switch, anyone who's trying to sort of, hide content that should be in the game inside, randomized boxes and make people charge for them without telling them what the ratio is. That's not an authentic relationship with the player.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about with games as a service.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good, because then I know I completely took it the wrong way yesterday.
No, it's fine. It's fine. But it's easy because there's so many bad examples. And, you can blame games as a service. At the moment, there are a few people blaming games as a service for some of the PC and console experiences which aren't great. But actually, I would argue it's not the game as a service bit that's wrong. Well, there is a balancing issue. It's the fact that they're also charging up front. $60 to get a game, and then you hide half of it behind, a paywall as well. I don't feel like I'm a valued player. I feel like I'm a cash cow for someone's company.
Yeah. And if it's good, I'm in the end, I have the urge of paying anyways because I want to speed up or I'm engaged.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to give people reasons to pay and to care about paying. You've got to get people reason to engage. But, I think most people understand if you're producing a multi-million-dollar game experience, particularly. But some games are less than that. I work with a lot of games that have a smaller budget. If you're working on a game that costs these intrepid developers money, time, etc., well, they want to be able to feed their kids at the end of the day. They want to be able to, be able to go on a holiday occasionally, maybe. And most indie developers I know can't.
No, I mean, if they can pay the rent and have food, then they're happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Coming to that, I always ask people no, let me put it differently. I think you're a complete idiot if you want to start a gaming studio or a gaming startup.
Absolutely. I'm one of those idiots.
Yeah. I guess we all are. But now there is this young generation coming. And although I see that they have more opportunities to get a spot somewhere in the top 10 because of new insights, new technologies, what advice would you give someone of 18, 20 years old, passionate about gaming and thinking, you know what, either I'm a dropout of school or I have that one degree, I just want to follow my heart?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
what is your advice?
So make sure you've got a backup plan. I mean, that's the first thing. But I think what you need to think about is, if you really love games, is it playing you love or is it making you love? And they are different things.
Yeah.
There is nothing worse. There is only one thing worse than making games, and that's not making games. If that's how you feel, and if that's how you feel, that's why you should be in the games industry. I mean, there are much better ways of making money. There are much better opportunities out there. However, there is no discipline that combines all of these skill sets and all of the different combinations of personality type like games. Being able to have art, science, engineering, maths, English, writing, emotion, psychology, monetization, economics in one discipline, that's crazy. But thinking about games simply is like, look at what you love in terms of gameplay and try to see if you can find one mechanic, one thing, and try to see if you can make it fun. Then think how you can make it extensible. So something like a game like Plank or Skyward. So Plank, you hold the screen and you release it. That's all you do. But in doing that, the plank grows and it stops growing upon release, and then it falls down and you go over it. Why is that great? Because everything is down to how long I hold the screen. As a player, I am empowered. I have autonomy. And the results are the results. So I'm in control of the outcome. So it becomes fun because you change the distances between different objects that you've got to connect to. So there's variability. How quickly I do it, how many choices, how many mistakes I make. All these things can be really interesting. So think about simple interactions and why they become interesting first. And then what emotions you try to convey when you do that. How do you tell a story? And I think building up your game in layers over time and just experiment. Make 100 different silly mechanics. Make 1,000 of them. The more you fail in that process and the more you assess what it is you've done and why it works or doesn't work, the better you get to understand what's happening. And you don't have to be a coder to enjoy this. You can sit there with bits of paper and play board games and move things around. You don't have to be an artist, although obviously it helps if you draw things in a way that communicates ideas. Most people can communicate. Well, a classic example for me is I am the worst drawer in the world. I cannot draw. And yet I managed to draw these triangular shapes to explain to a concept artist the body shape I wanted to see for a particular avatar. So use what you can do, but just try to communicate with other people who are around you who also want to make games with you. Learn, try, test. And I think really breaking down games and just doing it is the most important thing. Yes, you can go and get a degree nowadays, and that's amazing. I never thought you'd be able to get a degree. I've got no problem if you want to go do that. Fantastic. But the key thing is keep making games, because that's the best way to learn.
And to start. I mean, I'm seeing too many indies that suddenly give up their day job, Because they have the vibe, and it's also guys that were in a company, in a gaming company, that then want to do something on their own. I always advise to have a sort of an intermediary period where maybe in the evening you start working with quote unquote your friends or colleagues, and see if you can get something rolling, see if there's team synergy, see if there is output, and if that is, then really start creating a studio, as you can call it.
I mean, that's why I'm so jealous of kids. Had Unity or something like that been around when I was a kid, when I was like 15, well, in 1984, had I had tools like that, I would have been just ecstatic. I mean, as it happened, I did try coding, and I did a terrible job. I realized I was never going to be any good at it. Hence, I became a manager. But the point is that just by having those tools available, it's amazing how quickly you can make things expressive and simple and out there. But it's getting the same problem is really always the case. The tools can change, the tools can improve. All that does is it makes the end goal further away. We happen to have greater tools. It democratizes development, but at the same time, what it does is it means that the market is busier, more mature. So innovating becomes the challenge rather than just learning the raw skills. Well, although you've got to learn the raw skills too. So all the challenges change every time. But I think you're right. Being able to spend time aside, for example, if you're at university, what a fantastic time, because you can do it without risk. I wish I'd had that. I haven't. I didn't have the choice actually, because I was paying my way. So actually, a lot of kids do have to work, and so they don't get that spare time that a lot of university students get nowadays. But more than that, still finding a way to take time. It's amazing how much time you can take. As much as you want to watch that next Netflix series, maybe if you can put an hour aside a day or 2 hours aside a day, just putting paper prototypes together, you might find you're actually finding it more useful, more valuable. That's what ended up with me going around to these small conventions, showing off my games and learning, basically cutting teeth in game design.
Which company have you been following since start and has become one of the main gaming companies today?
Well, the obvious one has got to be, let's say person, Ilka. I'm very lucky that I know Ilka reasonably well. Back in, I think it was 2003, 2002, we actually gave Sumia, the company he was running at the time, a check for something like $25,000 to have his game on our deck, the 3G mobile phone experience. So he won this competition we ran. I'd forgotten about this, and obviously Samir was bought by Digital Chocolate, and then Ilka left Digital Chocolate, set up Supercell. He had a fantastic talk in 2011 about the failure of was it Gunshine. I got to chat with him there, and then the next thing I know, we have Supercell. I'm on stage at a Supercell event in Helsinki that they ran for the development community, and Ilka is reminding me of this story. I think that's the one of the that's a very self-aggrandizing story to a certain extent, but that's just what reason for that. Though the reason I'm mentioning it is not because it's Ilka and Supercell. Supercell are obviously one of the most amazing companies on the planet, but this is a sense of the people. Someone like him are so genuine, so human, so nice, capable, interesting, etc. That it's easy to lose sight of that when you see a massive company like Supercell now. And almost all of these companies, I can trace back some connection to nowadays, to some of the earlier days. So a lot, not like Rovio, for example. I put the first proper Rovio game called Darkest Sphere up, and then of course they're now this massive giant. I've got to have this taste of a lot of these people and the people behind it, and to a large extent, the ones who've been around forever haven't really seemed to change that much. Their opportunities have changed. Don't get me wrong, of course they have, but they still seem
Yeah.
to be the same genuine people who have a passion and love for making games. And I think that's really at the heart of all of this. You know,
Why Finland?
well, why Finland? That's
Was it
an interesting
really?
one. It's not just Finland, but Finland obviously came out of the Nokia. Nokia was such an amazing
Yeah.
force for mobile, and a lot of people who were involved in Nokia, games in particular, went on to make games themselves. But it was also, it provided this. If you look at it, it's kind of a combination in my head, whether this is true or not. But what I see is you've got Nokia and you've got the festival Assembly. Now, ironically, UC was one of the people behind Assembly as well. Assembly is where a lot of people who were really interested in like the demo scene and were really interested in making stuff and really interested in games got together. And that fertilized an amazing opportunity. Combine that with the Techists kind of funding they've got in Finland, then you can see, of course, Finland's a perfect place. You've got a whole bunch of people, lots of focus on tech and coding, lots of people who know each other through a mutual connection through games. You can see how that environment is very conducive to success.
It's exactly that. I've come to know Finland as where the quote-unquote indie community was always very much in talks with each other. The failures were discussed, but also the helping.
Yeah.
And that together led, I think, in the end, TechS back then, what is Business Finland today, has driven that industry, that gaming industry, to the great success they're having. So a lot of people are saying in Finland it's happening. What is your take on what's happening right now? I mean, we see India coming up, we see Latin coming up, we see, well, a lot of people are targeting China, but it's not that easy. If you look at publishing your game, I mean, everyone wants to have the world play their game. Any advice on how to publish?
Well, I mean, again, that's a ever-moving feast, isn't it? I think essentially the beauty of the mobile era, and it's not just limited to mobile, because obviously things like Steam and Epic are there for the PC side, but there's been a liberation from the constraints of having to go through a publisher. But at the same time, as the competition, because anyone could potentially release a game, has gone up, we've seen that actually publishing is also a skill. So having somebody who understands marketing, who understands, by the way, when I say marketing, I don't just mean traditional marketing. I actually mean the whole. I think of marketing as a overview of all of the disciplines. So user acquisition is a specialist form of marketing in my head, in my description, because user acquisition is about using data to optimize targeting of direct response advertising. It's all about reducing the friction between sharing an idea with somebody and them having the game on their device. Marketing in general is obviously wider than that, because we're looking at brand building, we're looking at kind of general kind of awareness, but that's a lot less measurable than the user acquisition aspects. So a lot of people have ignored that part of the business. I think that's a shame, because there's lots of opportunities around building up company brands which are missed as a result. It's hard to make a game with the values of Pokemon when you don't do those wider marketing pieces. Angry Birds has done an amazing job of building up a wider brand, an actual sort of social zeitgeist brand. But that's a rare example of where mobile has actually managed to pull that off. But essentially, understanding the full range of what happens, the effectiveness of press has gone down dramatically. But that doesn't mean it's not important for other aspects of what your game does. Social media has obviously exploded in its importance, and particularly influencers, the need to engage them. All of these are skills. All these about networking, all these about connecting with people and being able to find the best way to get people talking about your game. Still to this day, the best method of getting somebody to download your game is word of mouth.
No.
So understanding all of that
and
is a skill,
yeah,
and it takes money.
Yeah.
And so if you are starting now and you want to publish your game, you're either going to have to learn those skills, find someone who does them, or find a publisher. But you want to find publishers who are partners, who are actually invested in what you do and are committed to the success of the game. And that's not as easy as it sounds.
community.
I consider as part of the sort of wider principle of social network. So so as part of live operations, the way I look at this, I look at the game experience and the marketing experience as two connected Venn diagrams, if you like. They're kind of two connected loops. So I've got to run events and promotions. Well, if I'm going to run an event, I want people to find out about it. So I want the in-game community to know about it. But I also want to use social media to let people who are not in the in-game community know how exciting things are going on in the game. And I might even use material that's part of that event. Maybe there's a new bit of content. I might include that in the updated version of my campaign for the user acquisition. So my videos that I'm going to use to get installs will include references to current live activity. So to me, community, social media are essentially two sides of the same face. They might be different people, but they're all about your ability to communicate to your audience and, importantly, to listen to your audience. And looking holistically at your game as a live, living, operated experience that has an audience, that audience will be in different channels. Some of them will be in games. Some of them will be out of games. Some of them will be wider context than that. And really, that's what I do as a consultant, is really try and help people understand, does their game work? How do they make money out of their game? And are they doing that in the best possible way? But then, importantly, how do you operate that game? How do you manage it? In fact, we're about to focus much more on a concept around the idea of live ops as a service, but I can't talk about that just yet.
No. And a vital part, getting players. So the user acquisition. How many articles have we been reading? It's broken. It's expensive. There are a lot of companies that want to do the user acquisition for you. There's a lot of fraud. It feels like a tricky path. If there's a company and they're making some money, they have some organic growth, they have some funding. How should you approach user acquisition? Because everyone wants to grow its game.
I have a little method I use throughout the whole process, which is this is nothing special that a lot of people use it. It's a technique called personas. So personas is about understanding who your audience is. And my play on it is, my primary persona are the people I make the game mechanic for. My secondary persona are the people I make the context loop for. And the tertiary persona are the people I make the metagame for. Now, the reason for that is that you need to have one clear idea of who it is who's going to play the game and make the game for them. But if you want to expand the potential scale of the game, you need to think about the wider audience. And again, that's why you think about these three different kind of personality categories. And what I'm looking for there is sometimes I look at demographics. I'm less interested in demographics, although it does help you come up with a kind of idea of where they will be and who they will be. I think about the behavior of those players and how they work in context of the game, but also what they do outside of gameplay. Now, that's the bit that's important here, because when you're looking at user acquisition, you need to know where players are. Now, we're very lucky in games because players are where we want them to be, i.e. playing games. But we got to get them from that game over there to our game over here. So we can do amazing things with things like Facebook, where we can target by looking at every single bit of behavior of somebody who's playing a game like ours, and we can talk to them directly. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. We can do that with all sorts. Facebook's not the only way to do that. There are lots of others, and obviously, the use of things like rewarded video, all that kind of stuff can be great, especially if the game that is rewarding is giving good value to the player. Anyway. So yes, we do direct response, and that's going to be the primary driver. But the real skill comes when you start looking at how you optimize that process, and that's about data and about optimizing the campaign. And so, people like Eric Suffolk are kind of brilliant at this, and they basically look at, what is it in terms of the positioning and layering. So you might come up with like, here's my trailer. Okay, I might have 3 or 4 different versions of the background showing gameplay, or I might have real people, or I might have some other actor, and I will test which of those works best. I'll test of those at which work best where the positioning of the message will be, what the messages will be themselves, what color the buttons will be. And in fact, what I'll probably end up doing is have an array of those so I can run campaigns in different places with different audiences that have different responses. That becomes very sophisticated when you do that. But again, if you want to simplify it, it's like pull together an ad which communicates an aspiration and a desire and a fear of missing out of that game. There's a piece of work that was done by psychologists and marketing people took on called consumer behavior as need. Sorry, I got it wrong. Sorry, consumer behavior as risk. It's risk, not need. So if you think about consumer behavior as risk, so I'm going to go buy a pair of jeans. Well, I have to want it. I have to desire that pair of jeans. And if I see a label on it that says 50% off, limited time period, I now have a reason to act because I've got a fear of missing out on that deal. And if those jeans look pretty good, if I think my friends will think I look good in them, then I've got a social capital in getting those jeans. There's a value in doing that. But there's one piece of the puzzle you have no control over. And I'm using the term abnegation to describe it. Now, all abnegation is a fancy way of saying the things I ought to be doing instead. So I've got that pair of jeans over there, but I look at my bank balance. Do I have the money for it? I look at my other things I should be spending that money on. If I do not set aside the other things I need to do, I'm not buying those jeans. The only thing we can do, as if we're not manipulating and stuff like that, which always fails in the long run, but and don't do it, just don't do it. But if I do it properly, the aspiration of wanting those jeans, the fear of missing out, and the social value of those jeans, so what they look like, the quality of them, they give me enough motivation to overcome my reason to not naturally act. And your ad needs to do that. It needs to create a stimulus that creates anticipation, desire, and social values that allows me to overcome my natural resistance because there are other things I should be doing instead. That's what an ad needs to communicate. Reason to act now.
Cool. We're at 50 minutes, and I'm actually having one more question, and that is, there are so many gaming events, and a lot of times I'm seeing the same indies going to all the events. So it's actually a twofold question. One, should you go to events? And two, which events would you actually advise as a small gaming development company to actually appear, to be there? I mean, to pitch. Which events would you reckon are the best?
That's an interesting long question. In the current climate, seeing as I'm sat at home self-isolating. But actually, so right now, there are fantastic events. I'm going to have to talk about Pocket Gamer Digital, for example. So I'm helping. Lucky, I helped the guys out with the speaker lineup for that event. Pocket Gamer is very close to my heart. I think I've only missed one, and that was because I had my appendix out a few weeks before. Pocket Gamer I love. I think the guys have done an amazing job of creating a community of people who are spread between the kind of high-end professional, kind of like massive companies, and also the indie and the people starting out. It's got that blend. It depends on what you're trying to do. So if you want talks, an event like that is great because you have some of the best people in the world who are limited to a 20-minute slot. Now, that sounds like it's not enough, and it isn't enough for long, in-depth things. But what it does is it means you see more people talking about something, and they distill their key message into a very short period of time. And I think that's incredibly effective because you get to learn a huge amount. I love sitting and hosting those events, mostly because it makes me sound clever because I can listen to everybody and learn it all, but also because I get to sort of be part of the debate. And so as you have panels talking about user acquisition, you can learn about how people are now using kind of programmatic bidding, and that, you know, they're using the header information to understand who they're going, which particular individuals they're going to send a particular ad to. That kind of stuff is so sophisticated and fantastic. Wouldn't have dreamed it was possible 10 years ago, but now it is. The other thing is that it's what you're going for. So an event like Pocket Gamer or Casual Connect or White Nights or whatever, they all have different reasons to be there. So if you're an indie, going somewhere that's got something like a big indie pitch, that could be incredible because you can get to have somebody review your game and understand, you know, what they think of it, their professional response, and if you're lucky, maybe you even win, and then you got something to talk about. Visibility. But you're in a community of other people going through the same process. So that kind of stuff is. Sorry, I just drank some water the wrong way. That's fine. I'm not sick. So being in that community is really good. If you're more professional, professional organisation, which you've got more of a track record. Not saying indies aren't professional, but if you've got a professional structure where you've got repeatable, income, then you're probably more talking about the kind of business that we're going to talk about. Which partners to use, what's the best way you can get the best data, what's the best way you can connect with the right people. Of course, there's the opportunities around fundraising and talking to investors, but also, opportunities around, identifying companies who you might want to acquire, for example. So all these events are incredibly powerful, and all that's great. But it's actually about making the friends in the networking events who you can talk to, frankly, about what's necessary. And when you move on from that, you can go further, because down the line, when you've connected these people, they will all. You see people come in and go from the industry events and industry itself, but generally you find a core of people like yourself who we see each other at multiple events during the year. And there'll be something where I need to know something, and you'll be the guy who I need to know it from. And I can go to you, and you already know who I am. You already know why I'm asking, and you're going to be much more willing and interested in the results of that. And that, I think, is the reason for going to events. It's the ability to network, connect, and actually engage and be part of an industry which you love, and be able to be more effective at. So finding events that work for you, I think the local events can be amazing. Particularly, they may be smaller, but they often will have people in your community who you can engage with. I think the events like, obviously GDC is not happening right now. I should be there right now doing it, but I'm not. They're great and amazing learning opportunities. But you need to work out and pace yourself. At Unity, I was doing an average of 42 events a year. I was traveling to 30 countries a year. That's not sane. But it was my job. Most game developers don't.
And it's fun.
That. They need to find, the ones they need to go to make the connections they need. So if you need to find an event to talk to people in Europe, go to Gamescom, go to Pocket Gamer London, go to Pocket Gamer Helsinki, go to White Night. Find the right one for you. But also don't ignore the smaller events in your local community.
What are you doing today?
I am working on the strategy for a new company, which I can't quite talk about yet. So we've been doing some fundraising for a new company. Basically, we're going to be focusing more on supporting teams from concept to live ops, but particularly around the live ops side. So you hopefully will be hearing a lot more about live ops as a service.
Cool.
Great.
Keep me posted. I actually for the 30 minutes, and we said like after 30 minutes, I would say 30 minutes, but I really found this very interesting, and this is very helpful for people that are at the beginnings of what might be a major company or a company that just has a lot of fun, makes good money. I think today there's a lot of people that actually want to get involved in gaming. The numerous questions I get via email or LinkedIn, it's really fun to see everyone being so enthusiastic.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's exactly this what I want to do with my podcast. It's giving people some thoughts, and then obviously I'll put a link to your LinkedIn so that people can ask you more questions. And
no, that's great.
I want to thank you for
really
this.
Appreciate it. I need to do this anyway, and I was planning to look at Anchor because I know the Deconstructor Fund guys use it. So yeah, it's interesting. And like I say, anytime, just let me know. I'm always happy to help.
Cool.
All right, mate. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
See you around.
Cool.
Bye.
You too. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Oscar. And Oscar, thank you very much. It's an hour, and so it's Thursday, the 19th of March. I hope everyone is safe with their families at home. Please be safe and stay safe. On Sunday, there is a new episode. In that episode, I have a Nordic game with Jakob and Teddy. I have my company's watch list back again. And some other things, most likely. I'm still prepping. So hope you enjoy it, and I hope you will share this podcast with your gaming friends. I gonna end this. Ciao for now.
This was all for today. Thanks so much for listening to Game Consultant. Tune in next week for a brand new episode. And remember, do share this podcast with other members of the games industry.